welcome to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We're two physical therapists living the life in Las Vegas. I'm Dr. Erica.
And I'm Dr. Joe. We created this podcast for two reasons. First, to connect the healthcare, wellness, and fitness communities in Las Vegas. And second, to highlight all the amazing people we've met along the way.
Thank you for listening, and remember to take care of yourself.
All right, welcome to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We appreciate you being on the show. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Man, to be on a Las Vegas show, first time ever. I mean, ever. I was on a Jersey show like 2 weeks ago, a Swedish show yesterday or 2 days ago, but a Vegas show, our own hometown. I'm so honored to be here. So thank you, first of all.
Oh, we're honored to have you as a guest. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I know you too, though. A lot of people might not understand that before I introduce myself. I know you too because of your work here. You have a really good reputation. You have a nice following of people that love you. So I'm really happy to actually sit with you on camera and audio and talk. But my name is Scott Davidson. I live here in Vegas. I'm a father, a venture athlete, and I'm adaptive. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I host Living Adaptive, and this is a true story.
We appreciate it. It was for the kind words, Scott.
Absolutely.
So you recently just started the newer podcast. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this one's different. It's presentation based instead of interview based. And it's transformative stories. They could be adventurous, romantic, whatever. We're going to take you on a journey where I go and find a guest who has gotten their favorite masterpiece. Maybe they wrote it and we found them on medium.com, or they found us, or they submitted one. And it's going to be one of the most transformative experiences in their life, like something, that moment that has changed your life forever. And they write it, they present it, put some sound beds to it, and just make it almost like a better version of the Moth or a TED Talk. You know, you get a chance to really tell everything.
So what inspired that? I know you have some podcasting, background. What inspired this show particularly?
It was one thing we always try to capture, is that transformative story. But like in an interview, we forget stuff. On a TED Talk, it's so sanitized. In a Moth, they forget stuff there too. So like, why worry about forgetting anything? Get it all written down, make it your masterpiece, make that transformative story available for all of us. And that was the goal. Storytelling has always been something I've been doing, 6 years of storytelling in a podcast form, 5-6 years. But then in general, it's always been the case for my life, whether it was writing, social media, work, whatever.
That's a very cool idea. Eric and I have had some stories before for things, and I don't have the best memory. She's like, you should really write that down, be able to tell that story a little bit better next time.
Do you got one? Because we could use some guests. We could use some exciting guests. We don't have anybody from the physical world in terms of PTs. Mm-hmm. Two PTs that met in school down in Georgia. That's a great story in itself, right?
Oh yeah, we could talk about some clinical rotations that were pretty funny. It'd be interesting.
How'd you guys meet? Like who hit on who first?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know. How would you answer that? That's
a fabulous question. We were friends first.
And I thought she didn't have a car because she had two roommates and they always drove her all the time. And then we ended up being in an opposite, like they divide the class up. So we were opposite of her roommates. And then I saw her one time. I thought, oh, she probably needs a ride because she doesn't have a car. It's tough being from out of state and from across the country. I just assumed that she flew here. So I was like, oh, well, I'm going to the gym too. And we both work out. We do our own thing. So if you want, I can just give you a ride to the gym. So I drove her for several weeks before I realized that she even had a car. And then one day I saw her like putting something in the back of a car I hadn't seen before. I was like, that's odd.
And then that was it, right? You're like, I'm in.
Yeah. Like now that I know she has a car, self-sufficient. I like that.
So let's talk a little bit about Living Adaptive. So you've been doing that for 6 years. What is it about? And, how did you start doing that, first of all?
So there was a point in my life I wasn't adapting. So to get kind of to my story, congenital clubfoot impacting hips, knees, and feet, especially the feet. First two people I met like me are double amputees, meaning that they had bilateral clubfoot. They ended up having the PMR surgeries, post-medial release, and now they don't have their legs. So it can get very serious. I feel like a lot of people see like the easier cases. You know what I mean? A lot of times, like that's, some of them are notable. You go from Mia Hamm all the way to Rudy Garcia Tolson, the Paralympian that is also a double amputee. And there's so many people that have this disorder, and somewhere in the middle, well, for me on a severe side, but somewhere in the middle is where most people are. And I couldn't find stories like me though, like the severe side. I felt alone. There was no podcast, there was nothing out there. And it got to a point where I'm like, let's go see if we can go collect those stories. Let's collect the stories from those that are adaptive, that are arguably the best in the world at adapting, and let's figure out how we can publish these, make them digestible and enjoyable for the audience, and maybe build a community. And that's how Living Adaptive arose.
Tell us more about the podcast in general. Like, 6 years, what have you learned and what are the
So
highlights
much,
of that?
so much. I mean, podcasting in general, first, just turn on a mic. It doesn't matter if you suck at first, just turn on that goddamn mic and get going. Second is like, make sure you really love the subject. If you're doing it for money or something like that, you might be in trouble. If you're doing it for passion, you're going to be set. You're going to be good because the downloads won't bother you. If it's only like 20, 30, 50, whatever, it won't bother you because you're enjoying yourself. That's the biggest thing I learned about podcasting, I think, is just go for the love of the game first. What did I learn from the interviews? Everything. Everything. Um, how would I say this? How would I say this comfortably? Like, or how would I sum it up? I often get asked, like, what is it? Why is somebody that has a spinal cord injury that can no longer move neck down happy? Why why are you happy, Scott? You look different. People take pictures. People were taking pictures of my legs at Town Square last time it was warm and I was in shorts. Like, why are you happy with that? Why is somebody that has cancer and dying, like Matthew Haddon, one of my friends, and he did pass away, happy going into death? What did we learn from that? And there was always a common trend there. And Living Adaptive taught me that trend. This platform, this podcast taught me that trend of there is a way to approach life no matter how bad it gets. And if you follow some of these methods, you can live a really, really fucking fulfilling life.
So what sparked the idea to do a podcast? Why that form of media?
I love podcasting. I was a huge fan. Comedy podcast. I was already somebody that knew stuff about audio, editing, podcasters, entertainment in general. And that's where I knew I belonged. Like, I could hop out to vlogging or other platforms and work with other companies on different things, but podcasting is where I always come home to.
Going back from, your start, you felt like you didn't have the resources or maybe the community. And now flash forward to 6 years, like what has that process been of building that community and what have you seen from just as a reflection from your growth?
I met some of my best friends from podcasting. My current best friends that I work with, I compete with, I hang out with, I met from podcasting. And so like the rewards were great just there alone. But I don't think Osprey Pax looks at me if I wasn't podcasting. I don't think this company I'm meeting, a clothing company I'm meeting with tomorrow, gives a shit about me without my podcast. And so like I built a stage that they found value in, and there is a transaction that occurs. And so I get attention for what I want to do, and they get attention for what they want to do. They use me for what they need, and I use them for what I need. And that came from podcasting. And it sounds kind of rough to say that, but like every time I strap a backpack on for a company or put clothes on, there's kids born like me being like, oh shit, this guy's like me. He's still walking, or even if I'm not walking, he's still doing something. And that was some of the great things that came from it. It brought attention to my disability group.
As far as what you like to do, what are those things that you like to do and in terms of hobbies and things that you like doing, and what are you training for right now?
Okay, so right now I'm training for Cotopaxi. That's 20,000 feet up. It's a volcano in Ecuador. And I'm training with a bunch of amputees, one spinal cord injury, and then me with limb difference. And so I do a lot of outdoor training, a lot of hiking, a little bit of Ninja Warrior stuff. And I was always into OCRs like Spartan Race, Tough Mudder, things like that. A little bit training into that, but mostly for mountains. So I'm wearing my Red Rock shirt, right? So Red Rock Canyon is so important to me. It's my favorite thing in Vegas. It's my favorite place to go to. I hang out there at least once a week. I disappear into the rocks and just enjoy myself. And I train for that. I train to continue to enjoy the outdoors, maybe, in a workout setting, type of setting, or just for fun. And so that's what I'm always training in.
Yeah, Red Rock is gorgeous. That park is favored by climbers and hikers and has a lot to offer. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing park, and we've got this huge group of climbers coming in. I mean, Free Solo changed it all. Alex, who's in our valley right now, he's changed it. Like Red Rock was like, I could just disappear on a trail. After you go quarter mile in, everybody quits. They're like, I'm done. Now we've got a new crop of athletes out there that are pushing you. So Red Rock has become interesting and fun again.
Yeah, I love it. So what brought you to Vegas?
Lots of family. So I'm an East Coast kid at heart, for sure, but family migrated here. And so I wanted to be around family. My kids wanted to see grandma and grandpa. So we're out here now. And then there was opportunities. There's opportunities for this type of stuff, podcasting. I pointed at my mic for those just listening audio wise. And there was opportunities for other things like getting in the outdoors.
So what's that training like for Cotopaxi? Like what do you have to do? What does that entail? Are you training with the group? Are y'all all over the place, or everybody live in Vegas?
No, everybody's everywhere. Um, our one coach, he's Olympic coach, Joe Howdy Shell. He helps get our schedules. We get it. You know, I've worked with a couple Olympic coaches. This is like the greatest, most hardcore of them, though. And he preps us, you know, for to get ready to climb for like a day straight and just going straight up in elevation. So like that workout is basically gearing up. It starts with an hour of elevation on a Saturday, and by like month 2 you're at like 5-6 hours, you know, and then you just keep gearing up more and more. It is so hard. It is so hard, you know. Sorry, I'm going to cough. Got a little cold going on today, but it is so hard for this type of training, and especially with my adaptation, because my feet don't go up and down. They're just a straight L. So if you think about approaching a hill, for those watching, you can see this, but if you think about approaching a hill, it's just like hoping for the best. I've never towed off in my life. I've never done a calf raise in my life, so it becomes really hard. So I pick a sport that I hate the cold and I hate calf raises because I can't do it. And this is what I choose. So like it's kind of fun. It's a lot of training, but everybody's scattered all over the world for this climb.
So you do any kind of strength and conditioning in addition to the like practical application training?
Not really anymore. Like when I say not really, not like I used to. I felt like I did a lot of bodybuilding, not knowing I was doing bodybuilding for years. You know, like couple, you know, sets on a bench and stuff like that because it was easy. It's so much easier than this other stuff. To do ninja training, OCR training, or something like that, it's 100 times harder than getting underneath a rack and benching, you know? And so, like, I don't do that much anymore to conserve energy. Maybe some lightweight stuff, but it's all pretty much functional. Lots of burpees.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So as far as adaptive world, like this is in general, people may not know what that is. Can you tell us in general what that means and what that means for the athletes and other people looking in and not knowing what that is?
Well, we're all adaptive, right? Like, you two are adaptive. You adapt every day. Think of like how many people, we talked about this offline, how many people you adapt every single workout or movement to fit them. That's like your job as a personal trainer. You probably, or personal, as a as a PT, Jesus. Anyways, as a PT, like you get into the real intricacies of it. Well, let's take that to the whole entire scope of life, and let's take it to the disability community. We took the word disability, which I have no problem with, but adaptive sounds way cooler, right? We're adapting to it. So the disability world has really taken over the term adaptive. And by adaptive, we mean you may be born without the ability to walk, but you can adapt and figure out a way to like still make movement happen. Or maybe you're born without the ability to move in certain sections because of paralysis, or maybe you have been paralyzed, but there's ways to adapt still, adapt to life and make something happen. That's where the word adaptive comes from.
That's very cool. So when you were first starting the podcast and you got the idea for it, we're really new compared to you into this podcast realm, as people can probably tell even by the differences of the set behind us.
Oh, yeah.
So we first got to start and we're like, well, I guess we'll just get people on that we thought were cool in the community that we already interact in. That's how we started. And then we were amazed at how much that we really enjoyed just sitting down and having awesome conversations with people. Did you have a similar trend, or did you plan that out maybe a little bit better than we did?
No, I don't think I planned it out. I ended up I interviewed people that I really admired at first caregivers, or a friend from that documentary Murder Ball, and that came out like I think like 99 or something, or 2000, about wheelchair quad rugby. I just went after people I really admired. Or my buddy Keith Gable, a snowboarder, single amp. He really awesome special on him on ESPN from the I think like '08 games or something. I didn't have any real direction. I just wanted to, capture stories. It just wasn't mapped out. I think we're more in line, than what you might think.
Can you share with us, it's probably hard to pinpoint maybe one story particularly, but maybe two or three that you can think of that have really, for you, like what's that transformation for you of podcasting and hearing people's stories? What stands out to you the most?
Right now, like the stories that stand out the most are like caregivers. Diana Doyle is one I pointed to in an interview last time, and she deserves the attention. Her kid had a disability where the body shut down, and she stayed with her kid, of course, to the end. And there's nothing you can do, but hearing her perspective is like from a caregiver, you're like, wow, that changes everything. Now I think of like what else is out there that has really impacted me. Jill England, a true fault in our stars story. Her friend Scott, like my name's Scott, he's going through the same thing. When she loses a leg, he already lost the leg. When he got a running leg, she got a running leg. And running legs weren't like what they are now. And as this is going on, they're going through the process together. The problem is that Scott didn't get better. He died, and Jill didn't. And hearing Jill's perspective as a kid, going back to school, and everybody's running around and playing, and everything's normal, but Jill's friend Scott is dead, and she has to pretend like life goes on to an extent to make people feel better. And you hear how she gets through those, adversities. That changes everything. It changes every piece of you. You realize how quick life goes, how things seem fine right now, but you're one car wreck away, you're one tragedy away from it all changing. And you'd start to live really in the present moment.
It's very cool. It's amazing the things that you learn too. And I think that it being more of this intimate setting where it's just you having this like actual scheduled time to have a conversation with somebody where there's no distractions. It's amazing the things that come up in conversation. And we've talked to people that we know decently well, and they'll tell us things that they've been getting into or learning that we had no idea that they had any kind of passion for. Like, you're learning to play poker. You've never even mentioned that before. That's crazy.
That is funny, man. Like the idea though of like these conversations that occur on these podcasts, I feel like it's become commonplace to let your guard down when you're podcasting. Like a guest, they'll let you into kind of their inner world, how they function, what they think the purpose of life is. Like stuff you don't talk about, like when you're at a park, when you're over in Anthem Park here, and all of a sudden you're talking about the purpose of life. It just doesn't come out like that. But all of a sudden in front of the whole world, they're like, oh no, you're here to be a good person, live presently, whatever, whatever their whole purpose is. It comes out in podcasting. So I really love that idea of what podcasting can bring.
And tell us a little too. So you mentioned technology has changed maybe in the last 10 years, you can say. Tell us kind of the strides that you've noticed in terms of that technology for people to adapt and people to function and have improvements in their lives.
There's a lot to go over there. In terms of like prosthetic and orthotics, the growth has been incredible. I think also acceptance is huge. I hid my legs because I didn't want to get picked on. I didn't want to get bullied. I hid them all the time. It was awful. There's a story on Osprey's page about how awful it was. Like I remember just going to summer camp and kids pointing out how skinny my legs. I just wanted to swim. I wanted to camp. I wanted to do normal shit, and I got picked on. And it also makes a really callous kid too, a really mean kid at times, because like if you're treated hurt people. And I felt like that kind of represented a couple years of my life. That doesn't happen anymore. The technology in terms of like not just devices, but like access to information, understand that like it hurt. It was a time where it hurt. And luckily these stories are being shared. And so it's less likely to be the case. Kelly Bruno's a friend of mine. She's on Survivor in like 2010. And she really gets into this idea of like in our time, Paralympics, there was nobody's doing Paralympics. there's nobody clapping for you. You wore a pair of pants when you worked out because you didn't want anybody to clap for you. You just wanted to be like anybody else. Now it's really cool to wear a pair of shorts, to have a prosthetic leg. Like this younger generation doesn't get, like, you don't have to hide it anymore. And it's quite beautiful. I'm glad that happened. And then the technology side, that's incredible. I mean, the dynamic AFOs I'm wearing right now, that didn't exist at this level 10 years ago. And so now I'm running offloaded, which I'm going to be working with you two on, right? Are you ready for that? Because, like, I don't know any PTs in this area. Sorry, I need a drink.
We're up for it. Let's do it.
Yep, we're excited for that.
And you brought up a really good point too. I think that as technology's increased, it's given people the ability to see how different other people can be from them. So a lot of people live in cities and they don't realize that a huge amount of people live in smaller towns throughout the U.S. and whatever they see or do there might not be very common. I mean, like even people that play like an obscure musical instrument or something, you can go online and you will find other people that are doing it and they're awesome at it. So I think that the internet, I know the social media does not always have a lot of perks to it, but I think one of the good perks is that it's opened people's eyes to how different lives can be, and just watching what other people do, and it inspires other people, and you see someone doing it. And multiple times we've had people say they saw someone else do something. They're like, well, why can't I do that? Yeah, I'm going to go do the same thing as that person.
I think of this. Most common messages I get aren't like, I love your podcast. It's not that, guys. Anyways, what it really is parents, kids like me or adults like me, or just adapting to whatever, being like, am I going to be okay? And I can't say, like, you're going to be okay. It just might not be what you envision is okay. And that access to this community, our ability to go back and forth and talk, work through things, has been like so beneficial compared to what it's been before. I had a person from, I think, the UK, and he reached out and he goes, hey man, I don't see any other options. I'm going to cut my legs off. And I said, wait, just fucking wait for a second. Just give me 4 more weeks, because I already knew what was in works up in Seattle. I'm like, give me 4 weeks. I'm going to post a video and then decide if you still want to do that, because there's different options that exist, and this stuff is covered by insurance, and maybe that's a better option. But maybe in the end, amputation is best. But that access to each other, that access to, like, instant access to say, hey, I'm with you. I understand what you're going through, has been incredible.
No, that's incredible. Like, you can essentially say like, hey, 4 weeks, just wait for me, and then we'll talk, and then you can make a better decision. But that's an incredible impact that you have on someone's life, and you hadn't met them ever.
Oh, it's all the time.
That's
If you go to my IG feed, you'll see people say, I've never seen a device like that. I'm like, well, God damn it, you're going to see it do stupid shit soon in Vegas. We're going to be taking it over obstacles, and we're going to, and then there's the competition device who hates me, and they make a really great product, but they won't take insurance. So there's a group of people that can't pay for that. $9,000 per leg. And somebody like me will break them in a year. They say 2 to 5 years for them. How do you afford that? How do you afford that? So of course, I'm attached to you talked about the technology. I'm attached to the one that can provide it equal access, or at least a little bit of access, like via insurance. I'm really attracted to that and working with that company. And so right now, that's what I'm doing.
That's very cool. How did you find them, or did they find you?
Spartan Race. So a day before I was supposed to race in Spartan, a CPO was there. And she's like, man, there's devices for you. I'm like, no, there's not. I'm like, just shut up. There's nothing there. She's a very close friend. I would consider her a very close friend. And so she's like, there's a device for you. And I'm like, I've heard of it. It's $9,000 per leg. I'll break it in a year. There's no point in putting out 18,000 every single year until. And she's like, no, we can custom make it. And I tried one. Here in Vegas, and it didn't go well. So I went to the inventors, and I thought, this stuff shit. It's never going to work. I get up to the inventors. It's a whole different game. It's like, it was as intense as you can. You're PT, so you'll get it. Every angle, every measurement, walk, run, watch, video. We're just going to go through it, cast over again. All this stuff. And eventually out comes a device equitable to that one that's $9,000 per leg out of pocket each time. And isn't covered by insurance, like, uh-oh, We got like somebody else there. They just suck at social media, and we discuss this all the time. I'm like, your social media sucks so bad. You're getting your ass handed to you by this company, and they're not better than you. It's just that you suck at Instagram, you suck at everything else. And so like they're working on that side, but we're going to change the world. We're going to change it so that kids do have access to this stuff, adults have access, and that it's not an exclusive club. Because that clinic, that other clinic that happens to be 45 minutes from the one I work with, told me, they said, we don't call you, you call us. We have rich people from all over the world coming to our clinic. We don't need you. Well, guess what? We're going to change that. We're going to fucking change that. We're going to make it so you do need us. We're going to make it that you're competing against somebody that's a lot cooler, a lot more inclusive than you.
I think that sometimes when people don't really consider, like when they have that closed off mindset for something like that, they don't understand that they're allowing growth from somewhere else pretty readily.
Yep. 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 Like to have two PTs, like Erica reaches out. She's like, I can do this. I'm like, I'm cautious, Erica. I'm really cautious. I'm scared. The idea that you guys would even open your door and be like, yeah, let's take a really complicated case is really cool, because that didn't happen before. People like, go to a wheelchair, go be crippled, go somewhere else. You know what I mean? That was really the attitude before. And you guys like the challenge. I had a PT down my street. Oh God, here we go. We're making enemies in the neighborhood, I guess. But I had a PT down the street, really nice guy, but he's like, why would you run? You're going to be in a chair. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'd rather run for a week now and be in a chair next week than just be in a chair like year round or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with being in a chair. But like, if I'm going to be there, let's go enjoy it. Let's go enjoy our time on our way there. Let's go break some things and let's go have fun. It's hard to find that help, that passion that you guys are offering.
And I think for us too, that like we've both even been in physical therapy before, like before we went to school. And I was actually wanted to do that when I was younger, but was talked out of it, and then like circled back around years later, and then decided that that is what I wanted to do for a career. But I think it just depends on the person too, and how much challenge they want. And the patients that we normally work with they're much more active in general, so that's just used to that as our clientele. So for us, like that just seems normal. Like to me, it'd be weird for me to tell somebody to not do something.
Like it's just not that common though. That attitude's not as common as you think. Maybe you grew up with it. Maybe you're used to it. We seek it. It's hard to find it though. It's hard to find it. I mean, think of your classmates. Most are maybe getting a check and they're working somewhere else or at a hospital or something like that. And that's great. You chose a gym. You chose a gym where people are dropping barbells all day and doing crazy shit. So like, there's a reason you want to be with the active folk.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, to tell you the truth.
I don't want to do CrossFit anymore though.
No.
Yeah, I'm getting tired. I feel tired and like doing that stuff.
Well, whatever you want to do, like what we encourage people, like any movement that you prefer, whatever your movement practices, go for it.
Yeah, it's I'm just excited to see what we can do together as we work on stuff. I'm excited to see like what the possibilities are. Is there a method? Is there a way to handle these AFOs? Because like, yeah, there's a PT that helps out at the clinic up in Washington, but most of us don't live there. We pack our stuff and go. Maybe we can share what we've learned.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm curious, as you developed your mindset and your overall like ability and, you at some points there were probably some low points in your life when you're getting bullied and stuff, but what changed in your mind, or like at what point of your life where you're like, F this, like, I'm just going to get after it?
I was always getting after it. Believe it or not, I was the fastest kid in my grade for a year. Like that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm not a jock. Did you guys watch Superbad
Yeah.
movie? Yeah, I'm Michael Cera from Superbad.
Yeah.
That's who I am. Personality wise, childhood wise, everything. That kind of summarizes me. Just awkward, an absolute mess. And so like getting after it, I did do that when I was younger. High school kind of fell off because I was hurting. Like I don't know. I remember quitting everything because it just hurt so much. And my mom said I'd run till my feet bled. I don't even remember it. And I would say I probably really started getting after it again. Like I had a rebirth in life. I was always active every single day, but like competing wise, probably mid 30s. And what clicked was like, I'm like, I don't want to beat para athletes. I want to beat non-adaptive athletes for the generation below me because I got a chip on my shoulder. So I had to prove it to myself and to them, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys also asked what I want to mention this. Um, this is for the, sorry, I have such a cold right now. So sorry for everybody that out there is bearing through my huffs. I take an inhaler. I have asthma too. So sometimes hopefully your editor can make my breaths go away in there. But um, the one thing I wanted to mention too that we talked about is vulnerability. I just talked to somebody for a new show it's going to release. She was in her 30s, bad marriage, ends up becoming an exotic dancer. She has an incredible story. Everything's falling apart, has the worst body image issues, and that's how she sought validation. She hid that for like 15 years, and she hid her body image issues, everything. And one day she's like, I'm just going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell the world. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to get potentially sued. I'm going to share everything. And she thought everybody's going to just shun her and hate her and be done with her. That didn't happen. They called her brave. They called her amazing. So that vulnerability of thinking like, I'm weak. If I show this vulnerability, if I share this story, it's going to backfire. It never happened. That ghost, that anxiety, whatever was haunting you didn't exist. So maybe try being more vulnerable with your story and sharing it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we think about it, humans, like we forget that everybody is human, right? So we all have a need, like the Maslow's like hierarchy of needs, right? If you meet those things, that's what we all have in common, and everybody has feelings that they're, not good enough, or they're not doing something to their to whatever expectation that they want. But I mean, we're all going through that sometimes in our head, right? When we're thinking about, oh, what do I sound like when I'm talking in this mic, or what do I look like? Or, I'm not good enough for X, Y, and Z, or it goes through your head. It goes through mine every day. And you just kind of have to cut out the gibberish and be like, let's just go. Like, it doesn't matter. And kind of like
But
how you talk about being present in the moment. I think that's what essentially people can do is remember, like, nobody people don't really care that much, but they care that you're working hard and that you're doing stuff to better yourself.
do you want to know the one approach that the one approach that I saw when I said how did everybody that went through so much stay happy or maybe motivated? And the one approach was that no matter how bad it got, no matter how difficult the scenario, it didn't matter who was bringing you down or if you're bringing yourself down. You got up every day. So I take my friend, for example. He's a surfer and he has cerebral palsy and he wants to be the greatest surfer possible, the best in the para side and the best in the non adaptive side. And that means that no matter how much he hurts, no matter how much he's telling himself he can't, whatever's going on that day, he at least does something to get towards that goal. So, what does this mean in terms of everybody else that I've interviewed? They had one or two or 50 things they really, really, really wanted. And no matter how bad it got, even if they met surgery, even if they lost their leg, even if they lost movement, which did happen often, they still moved towards it. Matthew Haddon, when he was passing away, he was still moving towards goals. He was training in martial arts and everything. His life didn't stop because he's going to die, because we all are going to die. He still kept moving towards what he wanted.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. It's really amazing how people find these like intrinsic ways of motivating themselves. And I do think too that uh, a lot of people nowadays too are they're not used to doing things that are difficult or things that are hard.
Mhm.
And those are also the same people that complain about things, or they complain about how easy other people have it. But I've just noticed if you just intentionally try and do things that are difficult, like starting a business, starting a podcast, like force yourself to get up early, like even small little things, one at a time, it really does compound, and you'll be pretty impressed with things you're able to do over time, especially if you're into working out or doing difficult workouts.
I agree. Everybody loves David Goggins, right?
Hmm.
He does a lot of hard stuff. Jocko Willink. I work with a lot of veteran groups, man. A lot of clapping for them when they hit the finish line. None for me. No, the point being is like there's a lot of hard shit that comes out of the veteran side, or a lot of hard shit coming out of a lot of our speakers. but it's all relative too. Like maybe starting a podcast is just as hard as going to combat. It's what your fears are, what you're pushing, what you're challenging each day. I had the chance to talk to somebody that knew David Goggins, and they're like, yeah, there's like a David Goggins approach. And I'm like, how about we cut his legs off and see if he can still have that attitude of I'm going to do an ultra. Like a lot of things change when the variables change, and maybe that would be a challenge. Like what is considered tough to him is not maybe tough to others. Of course, Goggins is a different thing. It's just that the variables can often change. And what I find are the toughest people are the ones that like that person that is missing the legs, and maybe it is very difficult for them to even go 100 yards in their blades. I'm like that person's more powerful to me than David Goggins. They're trying that hard stuff that you're talking about, and maybe it doesn't look that pretty to somebody, or somebody scared of heights that finally climbs Angel's Landing or jumps out of an airplane. Whatever it is, to see yourself push yourself past those fears is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angel's Landing, it is pretty high for those people that have not done that yet.
Oh, it's so scary. We did it. So I was supposed to be in Ecuador in September or something this past year. They said climb in your respective places, and I'm like, well, I'm climbing warm. I'm not like I'm supposed to climb with a CPO over in Half Dome. I'm like, that's so cold right now. Since this doesn't matter as much compared to that, I'm going warm. I'm going to Zion. So we did Angel's Landing. That was scary. Oh my God. That was something else. And I had no balance. I'm so injured on the left side at that point. It was just terrible.
And it's crazy too, because you get all the way up there, and you're like, this is amazing. And like you said, scary, like narrow paths and everything. And then there's like a bunch of squirrels living up there. You're like, how'd they get there?
Yeah. Steve Mackleprang, he's a local comedian. He's up in Utah right now, but he's a very beloved comedian here in Las Vegas. He's missing his leg, and he's missing part of his foot. And so this is from a traumatic incident. And so Steve does all of Angel's Landing. When I say missing a foot, all he has is an AFO to balance him, and it's definitely not as cool as the AFOs you see me wear. And so he's doing that with a prosthetic leg. And I'm like, I just talked to him, in fact, yesterday on IG. I'm like, how the hell did you do that, man? And so major props to Mac for doing that. And go see his act if he's in Vegas. You Vegas people, support him.
Where does he perform? Do you know?
I don't know because of COVID. He hit everything before, but I don't know where anybody performs now. Like, where do people like go? I know that the Strat has had a ton of comics, stuff like that, but he's been down once or twice since COVID, and then he's up at Utah most of the time. He's just hanging with family right now.
You're good.
Got an interesting book though, Hop Along or Hop About. Hop About. He got pissed. He's like, it's not Hop Along like that movie. I'm like, different name, man.
So what's the comedy scene like in Vegas? We've only been here for a few years, and I really like stand-up comedy, but I haven't been anywhere out here. And a third of the time we've been here, everything's been closed.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, I don't know now. I know there's a lot of comics here, but I don't know where anybody's like actually performing outside of virtually. You know what I mean? So like, I know besides the Strat for like bigger comics, that seems to be it.
Who are some of your favorite local comics?
Mac always. Alex, I forget his name. Alex, he runs where you should, if you guys, for listeners, if you want to know where all the Las Vegas happenings are, there's a Las Vegas comics group. That one is where just pretend you're a comic, go in there, and you'll know where all the comics are at. So like where they're going to be performing and so forth. But there's a bunch in the area. For locals though, I'm going to tell you I'm really guilty because I love the California crowd. So okay, don't get mad at me, but one of my biggest like favorite people is always in town, and his name is Adam Hunter. And so when he's in town, I'm showing up, and I'm sure the locals are like, what the hell? And I'm like, yeah, he's like, when he shows up and who he has open, I'm just always thrilled.
That's good stuff. We'll check that out. So what's something you've learned and you wish you knew sooner?
It goes back to that vulnerability side, that I didn't have to be so embarrassed. I didn't have to be embarrassed of my legs or the way they looked like I always did. That I could have swam with my kids more often, and did those types of things without worrying how people would think. And it's not my business what they think at all. If they think I look like shit, if they think my legs looks dumb, ugly, whatever, it's not my business. I can't control that. So I got to figure out how I react to it. If they're bullying me, maybe I say something, or maybe I don't, whatever. But I got to figure out what makes me move forward towards what I want and not focus on those things so much. That's what I wish I knew earlier.
Speaking of that, what's something that you're excited about, whether it's professionally, personally, physically, mentally? What is something that you're excited about?
Okay, first thing I'm going to say what I'm not excited about. Kids growing up right now. All right. They're going so fast, and I'm not excited about that. What I am excited about is that I'm super pumped at like this whole idea of this other show. This is a true story. I feel like it opens up a whole different audience, a whole different like I don't know, a whole different community. I'm excited to see that community blossom because I've been definitely tagged down as like the adaptive stuff. And I want to like kind of expand that back to where like behind the scenes I don't work on as much adaptive things. So like I'm just Scott, you know. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. It's a ton of work, as you two know.
Oh, it's awesome. If you guys check out those videos, follow him on Instagram. They're amazing. Like he has just like the cuts are at the right spot. The music's it's phenomenal. I think check that out on Instagram.
It's all about that music licensing. It's all about that. By the way, somebody in Canada claimed that my legs were their legs 2 days ago on Instagram. So just be careful. And I don't even have a big account, but like, come on, like these licensing issues are getting crazy.
Wow. What's something you commonly see in your practice you wish more people knew?
When you say practice, do you mean like what do you mean by that?
It can be anything. Could be podcasting. Could be
daily
the
life,
adventures that you're doing.
Work.
Yeah. Okay. So like, there's so much insecurity, and not just that. What's that? You know how like the most common thing for a CEO is they feel like they're a hacker or fraud. Like somebody's going to figure that out.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Thank you. Imposter syndrome. There I go. Strong with the words again on my end. But like, no, on a serious note is like, there's so much imposter syndrome when it comes to like the personalities I work with. They have a really hard time too adjusting to the idea. Like just because they've got a name or they've been in some movies or something like that, they're regular too. And so like I think like embrace the idea that maybe you're not an imposter. Maybe you are a legit podcaster. Maybe you're a legit whatever, and just embrace that idea.
Sure.
I love it.
And food out here in Vegas is pretty amazing. So we always ask people, what's your favorite cheat meal?
Taco y Taco over on Eastern, and that's the best one for sure. It's over by the Source for all you potheads. It's right there.
What do you get there?
Yeah, chorizo all day. It's so nice. Like I've been trying to eat better, but it hasn't happened. I have the diet of maybe an 11 to 12-year-old boy that has a video game system, and then parents like give him like $100 for desserts and treats all week. You know, like that's where I'm at right now.
Very nice. And what do you want to leave listeners with?
What if we're talking to like, let's see, there's a lot of things I leave listeners with, but first I want to say to the Las Vegas people, let's keep building this community. Let's make it better. Las Vegas is growing very fast. Let's be kinder to each other. Let's be great. For the greater group, for everybody that's outside of here, man, no matter how bad it gets, you truly can adapt and thrive, and you can make something good out of adversity. And when I say that, there's opportunity in every shitty situation, whether it's to build a podcast, whether you get injured and become a PT because you learned a lot about yourself, whatever it is, there's opportunity in adversity, and you can make something good out of something bad.
I love that. And how can people find you?
Living_adaptive on Instagram, livingadaptive.com on every podcast app, Living Adaptive, and This Is a True Story. So all over that. And if you're in Vegas, you can come hang with me in Anthem area. I'm up there, and you'll see me hobbling sometimes, running, looking a little weird, having asthma issues like I am right now. So you'll it's like seasonal, I guess. So that's where you can find me.
Love it. Well, we really appreciate you being on the show, Scott. We appreciate everything you do. We appreciate your time. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guest as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast, or any combination of the three. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.